Hey, deep divers. Ever find yourself watching those medical dramas? You know, the ones, and wondering what's actually happening in those labs they always show?
Right, right.
Well, today we're ditching the stethoscopes, no doctors here.
Mm-hmm.
We're grabbing some microscopes as we deep dive into the world of a biomedical scientist.
Getting down to the cellular level, it's exciting.
Yeah, we've got RoleCatcher's career guide here to break it all down for us.
It's a whole different world than those medical shows, that's for sure.
So less dramatic music, more like, what, the hum of lab equipment and stuff?
Exactly. Think centrifuges whirring, pipettes clicking. It's where the real action is, uncovering the secrets behind those diagnoses and treatments.
Okay, so more like the unsung heroes, the ones behind the scenes running tests and analyzing samples and all that.
Precisely. This guide really dives into the nitty-gritty of it all.
So they're analyzing blood, looking at cells, maybe even doing some detective work to figure out what's causing infections.
Yeah, it's a demanding job, requires meticulous attention to detail, that's for sure.
And probably a strong stomach, I'm guessing, with all those samples and things?
Let's just say it's not for the squeamish.
Huh, okay, noted.
But for those who are fascinated by the human body and get a thrill out of scientific discovery, this career, it's incredibly rewarding.
The guide makes it clear that these biomedical scientists, they're not just technicians, they're really at the forefront of medical advancements.
Oh, absolutely. They're contributing to research, even developing new techniques.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and it's a field that's constantly evolving, always something new to learn, new technologies, new treatments.
It's got to be tough to keep up with all that.
It is, but that's also what makes it exciting. You're always on the cutting edge.
The guide mentioned AI, which seems crazy to me. Is that really a thing in biomedical science?
Oh, yeah, AI is changing the game.
Like in the movies, where they can predict diseases and stuff?
It's becoming a reality. AI can sift through massive amounts of data, patient information, help us identify patterns, even predict outbreaks with incredible accuracy.
Wow, that's amazing.
It can even help personalize treatments, like for cancer, based on a person's unique genetic makeup.
That's incredible. It sounds like this career is both intellectually stimulating and has a really big impact.
Absolutely.
But the guy did say there's a lot of pressure to get those experiments right, to make sure everything's accurate.
Right, and for good reason.
Yeah, because if you mess up a test, it could have serious consequences.
Exactly. Patient lives could be on the line, their diagnosis, treatment decisions.
So it's a huge responsibility, but also incredibly rewarding, I imagine.
Knowing that your work directly contributes to those diagnoses, those life-saving therapies, it's incredibly fulfilling.
I can see that. It's not just about the science, it's about the people, too.
Exactly.
So what's it actually like to be a biomedical scientist? What's a typical day look like? Is it all just tests and experiments?
Well, the guide breaks down the typical career stages, and each stage comes with its own unique rhythm.
Okay, so you start out as like an entry-level scientist. What are you doing then?
You're mastering those essential lab techniques, things like ELISA, the enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay,
Right, I think I've heard of that.
and PCR, polymerase chain reaction. Those are the building blocks.
Those are the acronyms they always throw around on those medical shows, but they're real.
Oh, they're very real, and they're essential tools in a biomedical lab.
So what do those techniques actually do in a real-world setting?
Well, imagine you're studying a particular protein that's linked to a disease.
Okay.
ELISA would be your go-to technique to measure how much of that protein is present in a patient sample.
I see.
Or let's say you're trying to detect a virus, PCR would allow you to amplify even the tiniest amount of viral DNA, making it detectable.
Wow, so it's like having a superpower, being able to see and analyze things that are invisible to the naked eye, and those things can have a huge impact on people's health.
Exactly. It's pretty amazing.
But I'm guessing there's a lot to learn. Before you reach that level of expertise, what kind of background or education do you need to even get started in biomedical science?
You're definitely right about that. It's not something you just pick up overnight. The guide really stresses the importance of a solid education.
Makes sense.
It usually starts with a bachelor's degree in a related field.
So like what, give us some examples.
Biomedical science is a common one, or medical laboratory science.
Okay, so you really specialize right from the start.
You can also go for a more general science degree like biology or chemistry.
Right, build that strong foundation.
Exactly. You need those core principles before you can dive into the really complex stuff.
It's not just about hitting the books though, right? The guide mentioned hands-on experience too.
Oh, absolutely. You can't learn everything from a textbook.
Yeah, I imagine you need to actually get your hands dirty in a lab to really get it.
Exactly. Look for internships, research opportunities, even volunteer positions.
So you can get comfortable with the equipment and everything.
Right, and learn how to analyze data, all those practical skills.
It's like the difference between reading about something and actually doing it, right?
Uh-huh.
Like, I could read a cookbook cover to cover, but that doesn't mean I could cook.
Uh-huh, exactly. You need that hands-on experience.
The guide also mentioned networking, which always makes me think of, business events and stuff, but I guess it's important for scientists too.
Oh, absolutely. Networking is crucial in any field.
So how does that work in biomedical science? What do you get out of it?
It's a chance to connect with other professionals, people who are already working in the field. You
Okay.
can learn from their experiences, hear about different career paths. It's really valuable.
And I bet those connections could lead to job opportunities too.
Absolutely. You never know who might be looking for someone with your skills.
It's like having a secret weapon, that network of people who can vouch for you.
That's a good way to put it.
So let's say you've got the education, the experience, the network, you're ready to land that dream job. What's the job market actually look like for biomedical scientists?
The good news is the job outlook is really promising.
Oh, that's great to hear.
The guide says there's a growing demand for skilled professionals in this field.
Why is that? Is it because of all the advancements happening?
Partly, but also because we have an aging population, which means more demand for healthcare services.
Right, and that means more need for people who can diagnose and treat those diseases.
Exactly.
We talked about AI earlier, which is already a huge advancement, but what other cool technologies are changing the game in biomedical science?
Oh, there are tons of exciting developments happening all the time.
Like what? Give us some examples.
One big one is automated testing systems.
What are those?
They can analyze samples much faster and more accurately than humans can.
Wow, that's incredible.
It's revolutionizing diagnostics, making things quicker and more efficient.
So that means patients can get diagnosed and treated faster.
Exactly. It's a win-win.
What else?
Another big one is electronic medical records.
Oh, yeah, those are becoming more and more common.
They're transforming how healthcare data is managed and shared.
So it's all digital now, no more paper files.
Right. It makes everything much more streamlined and helps different healthcare providers communicate better.
That's got to be helpful for coordinating patient care.
Absolutely. It improves efficiency and reduces the risk of errors.
It's amazing to see how technology is changing every aspect of healthcare.
It really is, and it's only going to continue to evolve.
With all these advancements, though, I imagine there are some ethical considerations that come up.
Oh, absolutely. Ethics are a huge part of biomedical science.
Like what kind of things?
Well, you're dealing with sensitive patient data, conducting research that could have far-reaching implications.
Right, it's not just about the science, it's about the people involved.
Exactly. The guide stresses the importance of a strong ethical compass.
So you have to think about the consequences of your work, make sure you're acting responsibly.
Right, and be prepared to navigate ethical dilemmas, because they will come up.
That's a good point. It's not always cut and dry.
Nope, there are a lot of gray areas in science.
So it's not just about being a brilliant scientist. You have to be a thoughtful and ethical one, too.
Exactly, those things go hand in hand.
Okay, so we've talked about the serious stuff, but let's talk about the fun stuff,
Mm-hmm.
the actual work. What does it look like to specialize in a particular area of biomedical science?
Oh, there are so many different paths you can take.
Like what? Give me some examples.
Well, let's say you're fascinated by infectious diseases.
Okay, fighting off those superbugs.
Exactly. You could specialize in identifying and analyzing new pathogens.
So you'd be on the front lines of outbreaks, trying to figure out what's causing them.
Right. And you could also work on developing diagnostic tests and treatments.
Wow, that's a high-stakes career, but so important.
It is, but it's also incredibly rewarding, knowing that your work could save lives.
I can see that. What about people who are more interested in the human body itself, like at the cellular level?
They might be drawn to cellular sciences.
What kind of work do they do?
They explore how cells work, how they interact with each other, how they're affected by disease.
So they're like the mechanics of the human body, figuring out all the intricate parts.
That's a good way to put it.
It's amazing to think about all the different areas of specialization, but regardless of what path you choose, what are some essential personality traits or skills that every biomedical scientist needs?
Well, obviously, you need a strong foundation in science and math.
Of course, it is science after all.
But beyond that, you need to be a good analytical thinker, a problem solver.
Makes sense. You're basically solving puzzles all day long, but with really high stakes.
Exactly. And you need to be able to think critically, and interpret complex data.
So it's not just about memorizing facts, it's about understanding them and applying them.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the importance of communication skills.
Oh, right, because you're not just working in a lab by yourself, you have to collaborate with others.
Right. You need to be able to explain your findings clearly, both in writing and verbally.
So you can share your discoveries with the world and make sure they have an impact. It makes you wonder, what does the typical career path look like in this field? How do you go from newbie to seasoned pro?
Well, the guide lays out a pretty typical progression.
Okay, so you start out as an entry-level scientist, then what?
You might start as a junior scientist, working under the supervision of more experienced colleagues.
So you're learning the ropes, mastering those basic techniques.
Right, and gradually taking on more responsibility as you gain experience.
And then what happens? You move up the ladder.
Exactly. As you prove yourself, you might transition into a senior scientist role.
So you're leading projects, mentoring junior scientists, that kind of thing.
Exactly. You become a leader in your field.
So you're moving up in the world, taking on more responsibility. Sounds impressive. But what about the practical side of things, like salary expectations? Does the guide mention anything about that?
It does. It gives a salary range, but it really depends on a lot of factors.
Like what?
Your location, obviously, different places pay differently, and then your specialization. Some areas are in higher demand than others.
Right. And how much experience you have, too, I'm guessing.
Exactly, but generally speaking, the more experience you have, the higher your earning potential.
So hard work pays off, literally.
Exactly. It's a career where you can definitely climb the ladder and see those rewards.
Okay, but landing that first job, especially in a competitive field like this, has got to be tough. Any advice from the guide on how to stand out?
It emphasizes the importance of tailoring your resume and cover letter.
So you can't just use the same one for every job.
No way. You got to highlight the skills that are most relevant for each specific position.
So what kind of skills are we talking about? Give me some examples.
Analytical thinking, problem solving, those are always in high demand.
Makes sense. You're doing a lot of that in this field.
And don't forget about communication skills. Those are crucial too.
Right. You have to be able to explain complex scientific concepts in a way that everyone can understand.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to toot your own horn a little bit. Show them why you're the best candidate for the job.
Confidence is key. I like it. And what about interviews? Any tips on how to ace those?
Practice, practice, practice.
So you're not fumbling over your words when they ask you a tough question.
Exactly. And the guide actually provides some sample interview questions.
Oh, wow. So you can get a sense of what they might ask you.
Yeah, it's like a sneak peek behind the curtain.
That's super helpful. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, from the technical stuff to the career advice, but is there anything else in this guide that really stood out to you? Anything that surprised you?
You know, what really struck me was the emphasis on the human element of this work.
Oh, yeah, because it's easy to get caught up in the science and forget that there are actual people behind all those samples and data points.
Exactly. And this guide really drives that point home. It reminds you that your work has the potential to impact real lives.
That's a powerful message. It's not just about the science. It's about using your knowledge to make a difference.
Exactly. And I think that's something that a lot of people who are drawn to this field really connect with.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, helping people.
Absolutely. And this guide does a great job of capturing that spirit.
Well said. So for anyone listening who's feeling that pull towards biomedical science, who's fascinated by the human body and driven to make a difference, this career path might be right up your alley.
It's a challenging field, no doubt, but it's also incredibly rewarding. And this RoleCatcher guide, it's a great place to start your journey.
It's your roadmap to navigating the world of biomedical science, from understanding those complex concepts to acing those job interviews and everything in between. So if you're ready to dive into this fascinating field, we encourage you to check it out. And who knows, maybe one day you'll be the one making groundbreaking discoveries and changing the world of medicine as we know it. Until then, keep those microscopes handy and stay curious, deep divers.
Absolutely. The future of science is waiting for you.